This week on the video version of the Business of Tech, bug bounties, sanctions on ransomware payments, and vendor security 2.0, Facebook launches a device management platform for the SMB. Nearly half of SMBs run in the cloud now, and who do they ask for help? Allstate blocks RMM usage and Datto's CISO responds. The FBI had decryption keys for the Kaseya breach for 3 weeks, and partner growth, chip shortage, and shadow IT. All this and more. Hit that like and subscribe buttons, and here are this week's stories. LinkedIn released a report about the so-called Zoom towns, great locations for remote workers, and these locations that are home to a disproportionate number of remote job applicants. Quoting from Tech Republic, telecommuter opportunities represented nearly 1/3 of all U.S. job postings on LinkedIn last month, according to the company, compared to 9.8% 1 year prior and 2.8% before the onset of COVID-19 in January 2020. Nationally, 21.3% of applications on LinkedIn were remote job applications between August 2020 and August 2021, per the Post. From that same date range, the percentage of remote job applications in Bend, Oregon was 41.8%, which is nearly double the national average, making the scenic Beaver State mountain town the top small city listed. The other 5 smaller cities included Asheville, North Carolina, 38.7%, Wilmington, Delaware, 35.9%, Johnson City, Tennessee, 35.2%, and Eugene, Oregon, 34.9%. Many professionals still appear to favor bustling metropolis areas. Among larger cities, Cape Coral, Florida, 33.1%, Charleston, South Carolina, 31.6%, and the Tampa Bay area at 29.6%. Florida rounds out the top 3, according to LinkedIn, followed by Jacksonville, Florida, Orlando, and Hampton Roads, Virginia, in order. While we're looking at staffing, some interesting data out of the UK around skills and employment. 45% of those surveyed are planning to change jobs in the next 6 months, and 62% have already had an interview. Why are they looking? Lack of career prospects at their existing employer, 22%, as well as the longer hours racked up while working remotely, 46%, and having to work during holidays as a result of the pandemic, 34%. As for the office, the employee bounce rate went up slightly in August, and the number of people coming into the office 3 or 4 times a week dropped to under 10%, according to data collected by Robin. Bounce rate is the percentage of employees coming into the office once and not returning for the rest of the month. Why do we care? So you can find people in very different places than you might consider. The ones you have are probably looking, and they aren't in the office. I'm clearly approaching dead horse beating territory with the perspective of instability in the employment market. That's simply the headline. The details are what matter. Can you hire anywhere? Which anywhere? Time zones are still a thing, and recruiting may require some location focus. 1/3 of all job listings last month is a lot of remote employees, and a lot of opportunities for your own employees to consider. This is a bit more detail about the landscape. You can go specific with some of these data points or simply track the overall trend. Microsoft Office 2021 for Windows is launching with commercial release on October 5th. It's now available within the long-term servicing channel already. This is the same day Windows 11 launches. There isn't a launch date yet for the Mac version. These all get 5 years of support, not the traditional 10. Why do we care? There's part of me that thinks this is more important than Windows 11 launches. Changes within the work layer are a lot more important than the operating system one. I'm not aware of a killer feature here. That's not to say there isn't one. Just observing this looks like more incremental progress. Doesn't mean it's not important. The ASCII group has announced the formation of an MSP security committee, which is intending to work on a framework for MSP security. The first effort will be to work on initial guidance on what to consider when vetting potential technical solutions. The National Society of IT Service Providers has announced their first full board of directors, adding 4 more board members to the initial 3. The group has also announced 500 members. Why do we care? Organizing within these groups feels like it's ramping up. ASCII hasn't expressed interest in being involved in legislation the way NSITSP has, although I would posit that any of these standards efforts can be a piece of the overall solution. Get involved with something that isn't focused on products and instead focuses on the business of what you do. Somehow you're going to be putting some time into regulations, either on the front end or cleanup on the back end. I'm inclined to believe it's easier to get involved earlier, if only to get more practice at it. The Biden administration is taking new actions to make it more difficult to profit from ransomware attacks. And one of those actions is sanctions. The first are against a Russian-based crypto exchange involved in ransomware. The Treasury Department is expected to issue new guidance on the risks for facilitating ransomware payments, including fines and other penalties. There will also be new anti-money laundering rules and terror finance rules too, designed to limit the use of cryptocurrency for payments in ransomware. It also appears both branches of Congress are working to make CISA more powerful. There's legislation to fund the agency from both chambers. Some insight into multi-party data breaches, they're 26 times more damaging than the worst single-party breach. The researchers found that financial and business support organizations dominate the top 2 slots in terms of ripple-generating victims and recipients of downstream loss events. HackerOne is expanding the Internet Bug Bounty program to help open source, taking over management of that program. Google, too, funding open source. It's now specified the 8 projects they're supporting through the Open Source Technology Improvement Fund. And here's one I didn't think of. Ever tried to guess your boss's password? Beyond Identity says that about 19.9% of those surveyed had, and 21.7% had tried for a coworker. On the personal side, it's 51.6% for romantic partners and 40.2% for parents. Finally, I want to direct listeners to a resource. Daniel Messler has written a piece on Vendor Security 2.0, focusing on assuming vendor compromise and how to leverage risk visibility, reduction, and communication approaches. It's an internal risk analysis approach rather than external security checks. Why do we care? If nothing else, my hope is that these discussions are causing a change in approach. I shake my fist a lot, and the point is changing your own perspective. Messler's methodology is worth a read for exactly this reason. Which leads to bug bounties. I have more to come on this, look for a bonus episode soon. The approach laid out in Vendor Security 2.0 includes understanding of the risk of the vendor, and their approach on bug bounties is part of that. Most IT service providers are managing vendors more than doing the work, particularly with the increasing cloud reliance. In an all SaaS future state from most SMBs, the responsibility is disproportionately in this space. And so, flex those muscles now and get into fighting shape. 2 data points about tech workers. First, some Seattle-based data filled with tech workers. Findings from the C.City survey show that the population of workers who once filled downtown Belltown and South Lake Union offices, bars and restaurants, and apartments are now increasingly looking to the suburbs after nearly 2 years of remote work amid the pandemic. The detailed survey of 467 tech workers between June and August also showed that while more than 50% of workers would consider moving away from Seattle, not all specifically spurred by remote work options, they're still engaged in their community. The vast majority of tech workers surveyed, a whopping 84%, say they will either be working remotely part-time, 56%, or full-time, 28%. Additionally, 53% are open to moving or have already moved. The 2 top reasons for moving? Housing affordability and the lure of remote work. And SolarWinds released data around Tech Pros for their IT Pro Day. Tech pros responding to this year's survey report a positive perception of their roles and say they look forward to what lies ahead. 48% of tech pro respondents say they're proud of what they do, another 44% love what they do, and 41% believe this year has proven they're more capable than they realized. As they look to the future, 62% of respondents say they're motivated to succeed in their roles, and 81% of the Tech Pro respondents agree there will be multiple opportunities to develop and enhance their careers in the next year. Why do we care? So if they quit, it's not that they hate what they do, it's that they hate doing it for you. Most employees leave because of one major factor: their boss. That's indicative of management style and why I harp so much on culture. The Seattle data is interesting as an example. I didn't cover this portion deeply, but those workers did have a lot of connections to their local community. The story here really is about building a good place to work with fair compensation that supports your team. Then there is the opportunity in helping other companies use technology to accomplish the same thing. IDC is reporting that the semiconductor market should normalize and balance by the middle of next year, and that there could be an overcapacity of chips in 2023. The semiconductor market is expected to grow by 17.3% this year, driven by mobile devices, laptops, servers, automobiles, smart homes, gaming, wearables, and Wi-Fi access points. The analyst notes that consumption remains healthy. IDC also released a Salesforce-sponsored report about the size of the company's impact between now and 2026. Salesforce and the ecosystem that surrounds it will be responsible for the creation of nearly 10 billion new jobs and 1.6 trillion in additional revenue for its partners. And as of 2021, the ecosystem of Salesforce partners delivering cloud services to customers is 5 times as big as Salesforce itself, and will be more than 6 times as big in 2026, the report said. Also in there, we predict that by 2025, the top 50 technology providers will focus 70% of their partner program budget on attracting, retaining, and motivating influencing partners. Meanwhile, a survey of mid-sized companies says they're investing in cloud services first, cybersecurity second. This, per the Channel Company's Mid-Size Enterprise Summit on Monday. 2021 IT spend will outpace 2020. ManageEngine published their 2021 Digital Readiness Survey, and the vast majority of U.S. IT pros, at 81%, believe that having remote workers has increased their enterprise's security challenge. According to the press release, and 97% of stateside companies have taken security actions to safeguard their data due to employees working from home. Virtually all U.S. survey respondents, 96%, said they were planning to stick with remote work for at least the next 2 years. The U.S. excelled in limiting shadow IT based on all app purchases requiring IT approval, according to the release, 10% above the average globally. On the flip side, as the executive summary points out, about 2/3 of North American companies, quote, failed to control which software the workforce is buying and installing. Interestingly, lines of business are now managing more enterprise applications than IT, accounting for 56% of all company app ownership and management, up from 4% year over year, according to a report from Productive. Why do we care? The Salesforce data is why I do a podcast on services. The ecosystem around the company is reported as 5 times as big as the company itself right now. Interpreting this pile of data, the chip shortage goes through mid-2020, making the climate choppy, although services growth within that critical business layer should be pretty strong. Security is still a thing, and dispersion of control continues to relate to IT, and thus why being in that business layer matters. So, Facebook launched several new pieces of their portal hardware this week, and that's not the story. The company also launched Portal for Business, which is a device management suite designed for management of the devices across a business. Specifically targeting the SMB, IT admins can manage devices set up by employees who have access to Portal for Business. Quoting further from Channel Pro New Zealand, the platform allows them to deploy and manage the hardware, control work accounts, manage device settings, check device status, and reboot devices remotely, regardless of where the workforce is based. From December, Facebook is also adding support for Microsoft Teams for all Portal devices, in a bid to entice more prospective customers and entire organizations who don't buy into Facebook's core collaboration platform. This also hints at more integrations with third-party services later down the line. The platform already supports Zoom. Why do we care? So, Facebook just launched a device management platform. I'd struggle to call this an RMM, but it's a lot more like a Microsoft Endpoint Manager or Google's endpoint management solutions for Chromebooks. Still, their designs on business feel like a hidden story, and as a chunk of SMB IT happens by accident, I'd expect these devices to start just showing up, too. Look, I have several of these portal devices, and I use them for Zoom calls. They're right to see an SMB play here. This is also another avenue for those exploring the work layer for their offerings. Are you struggling with your internal processes? Babysitting employees? Constantly putting out fires? Eureka Process is here to help. With strategy consulting to help with your strategy, process help for building and optimizing tools, and V-screening to help with your talent hiring, MSPs trust Eureka Process. And the best part? Resources right on YouTube. Visit youtube.com/Eureka Process and subscribe and learn, because growth is intentional. The Washington Post is reporting that the FBI had access to a decryption key for the Kaseya attack, which they delayed sharing for 3 weeks. Why? They were trying to launch an operation to disrupt REvil, but the plan was thwarted by REvil taking themselves offline. Why do we care? I'm going to offer a perspective here. It's not the FBI's job to protect business nor help them with the recovery. It's the FBI's job to investigate and find criminals and bring them to justice. I've seen some commentary in this story that implies the FBI made a bad call or further hurt those businesses impacted. That's not their job. It's the Federal Bureau of Investigation, not Bureau of Data Recovery. Don't go looking for blame here. The recovery plan is not to have law enforcement help a customer. That's the IT services company's job. Another tech jobs report, this time focused on open source. The 2021 Open Source Jobs Report found more demand than ever, and 92% of managers are having trouble finding enough talent, and many of them are also having fits holding on to their existing, senior open source staffers. 50% of employers surveyed stated they're increasing hires this year. The difficulty is 92% of managers reporting finding enough talent and hanging on to that talent in the face of fierce competition. And while we're on hiring, Amazon announced on Tuesday they are supporting 2 bills designed to decriminalize pot nationwide and to expunge and reduce the criminal records and sentences of those who've been incarcerated for it. Why? If you pull at the thread, it's about making more people eligible to be hired. Hackajob's survey says only 22% of tech workers surveyed agreed that remote working had a negative effect on workplace culture, with the majority, 44%, feeling that it had no impact at all. Almost 3/4, 72%, cited remote working as one of the key perks they looked for as part of a jobs package, while 67% said they'd broaden the scope of their job search due to the possibility of remote working. And 1 in 5, 21%, said they were looking to leave their current job because of a lack of flexibility from the organization, with 21% citing a lack of remote working options specifically. Why do we care? Well, it's my continued focus on hiring and employees. Amazon's looking to expand its worker pool, and so it's lobbying to make that happen. With sentiment towards legalizing marijuana increasingly popular and already passed in a number of states, seems logical to me, particularly for SMB companies, considering changes to drug policies could make a lot of sense. Remember all those stats you hear in the push to return to the office chorus when it starts up again later, and my recommendation is to resist. Worth considering. How much impact is remote working really having on culture? Nearly half of those workers think none. I'm skeptical, and this is an opinion, but if workers feel the culture's the same, doesn't that make it so? AppDirect asked SMBs about their SaaS usage and found that 45% of SMBs have most or all of their business software based in the cloud, compared to just 24% in 2017. To overcome migration and maintenance issues, almost 48% of SMBs are turning to outside professionals for help, such as technology advisors, consultants, channel partners, and telecom agents, and ISP telecom services providers, according to the report. While vendors remain the main source of solutions for 51% of SMBs, technology advisors' services have increased from 21% in 2017 to 28% today, while 20% of SMBs turn to telecom providers and ISPs to get their technology solutions. SMBs choose to work with advisors mainly because of their knowledge about technology, 51%, as well as because of their customer service and support, 49%, and a fast and easy buying process, 46%. Why do we care? Thinking about the SMB of the future, I envision exactly this scenario, with all business software in the cloud. Too often, I think the analysis is on organizations that are not this, and soon, this model will be the majority. I don't doubt the long-term value of a small provider because of the advice service. I wonder if enough of the service is focused on the knowledge of technology with the implied business skills versus a raw technical expertise. Those that have those business chops will outperform. Vice has reported on 8 leaked training videos from Apple, which show how the company trains repair technicians to undermine third-party companies and focus on Apple's own repair offerings. Examples include a focus on genuine parts, implying non-Apple parts are substandard. Why do we care? Right to repair. That's why. I suspect Apple is the boldest in pushing back against small repair shops, but certainly not the only one. Worth understanding what exactly they're doing. Go read the piece to learn more. Hackers don't break in, they log in. WatchGuard's CISO said last week at the Channel Company's Mid-Size Enterprise Summit, explaining why multi-factor authentication is crucial and how every employee within a company should be required to use it. He also highlighted how ransomware groups are going big game hunting now, with larger payouts and that double and triple extortion. And in a report from Positive Technologies, 69% of all malware attacks include ransomware. There's no honor among thieves, however. Turns out REvil added a backdoor to hijack ransomware negotiation from their affiliates to cut them out from payments. Security researchers have confirmed previous rumors. CISA has released an advisory on the Conti ransomware, noticing an increase in attacks. And Microsoft has uncovered a phishing as a service operation, an entire phishing operation including collections of pages and templates combined with hosting and email sending services. Register for $800 and new templates for attacks run from $80 to $100 within a full e-commerce store. Let's Encrypt will stop using an older root certificate next week. Users running older versions of macOS from 2016 and Windows XP with Service Pack 3 are likely to face issues, along with clients dependent on OpenSSL 1.0.2 or earlier, and older PlayStations that haven't been upgraded to newer firmware. Also on older tech, Apple has depreciated Transport Layer Security 1.0 and 1.1 and plans to remove support entirely in future releases. Mind you, that's 20-year-old tech. According to a report by cybersecurity researchers at NetScout, there were 5.4 million recorded DDoS attacks during the first half of 2021, a figure that represents an 11% rise compared with the same period last year. And Microsoft is investigating a new Exchange bug. Discovered in AutoDiscover, it can be leveraged to grab Windows users' credentials. The researchers released the flaw before notifying Microsoft. And all this security stuff is stressing people out. Kaspersky's research says that 70% of consumers are stressed about breaches, although this is a decrease from 2019 and 2018. All that said, it's not led to action. Why do we care? I want to highlight that e-commerce option for criminals here. That's how easy it is to get into the field. There's certainly no loyalty there, but with the criminals, better known as a business's competition, finding it so easy to make money, it's no wonder we're seeing this. Of course, on the defender's side, we're still looking at supporting 20-year-old tech. The fact that those two technical issues are stories speaks to the problem, but also the opportunity. If security threats are viewed as competition, then the framing of the investment to eliminate those older problems is entirely one of besting the competition. It's a framing I'm growing increasingly fond of. Protocol highlights employee resource groups and how they can be weaponized by management and used to undermine union efforts, diving into the way these groups can be highly effective or simply diversity theater. This is an examination of the various tensions. Meanwhile, Revelant looked at Fortune 500 organizations, and less than 1 in 5 CIOs at Fortune 500 identify as female. The company analyzed public data from sources such as LinkedIn profiles and company sites to produce the report. The gender gap at the highest levels of tech leadership has only marginally improved over the past 3 years. Representation among women CIOs is up just 2.8% since 2018. Why do we care? The protocol coverage is a good long read for the weekend. As I've covered on this show, there are some significant issues still to overcome in the areas of diversity and inclusion in tech. I maintain this is a competitive advantage to be leveraged in doing this well, and continue to point to resources that are helpful. A quick update to a story from earlier this week. A provider quoted a notice from Allstate blocking the use of Kaseya, Datto, and/or Ninja RMM within end client offices. Datto CISO Ryan Weeks acknowledged the policy and noted he's reached out to Allstate to understand their concerns and decision-making process and request a revisit of their position. Why do we care? Because Datto both acknowledged and thus confirmed the statement, and while they've asked, they weren't consulted. Allstate just moved. Insurance companies moving against MSP software providers should be of note to anyone in this space. I'm hearing a chorus of complaints from providers about how unfair, knee-jerk, or stupid it is, and I'm anticipating a silent group are simply moving to address this new portion of the market with alternative solutions. Thanks for tuning in to This Week in the Business of Tech. Shows come out each week, pulling together the daily podcast. If you like this show, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The content here is possible because of supporters like you. If you want access to shows early, answers to your questions, and private interactions, join our Patreon. It's pay what you want. You decide what the content is worth. Join at patreon.com/MSPradio. Patreons also get access to the written versions of every story as they come out. If you want the stories right away, you can get them on the daily podcast. Find The Business of Tech on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. Subscribe links at businessof.tech, and I'll talk to you again next week.